Even before it was published today, a new book has been making waves in Washington with its revelations about the fallout from the January 6th insurrection and the first year of the Biden administration. The authors are New York Times reporters Jonathan Martin and Alexander Burns, and their book is This Will Not Pass: Trump, Biden, and the Battle for America's Future. John Martin, Alex Burns, welcome to you both. Congratulations on this book. So much reporting here, so much to ask you about. But I do want to start with the news that has come out today, this extraordinary leaked opinion from the Supreme Court. The both of you have done so much political reporting over your careers. Let me start with you, John. What do you see, assuming this is where the court ends up, what do you see as the political fallout from this, especially for the midterm elections?
Well, it's going to galvanize Democratic activists who a lot of people in the Democratic Party were concerned heretofore. We're not terribly excited about this midterm election. President Biden's approval ratings are obviously dismal. There's not been enthusiasm from younger voters and from some people of color for Democratic candidates this year. And obviously, this potential decision offers Democrats the chance to turn that narrative around, Judy.
So we will see where that goes. But I do want to ask you, there's so much to ask you about the book. John Martin, you document how much power former President Trump wields over the Republican Party. My question is how he does that. I mean, you know, there's already been a lot of reporting about what you found out about Kevin McCarthy and what he said in the immediate aftermath of January 6th and then what he did. But so few Republicans are, as we see, able to stand up to former President Trump. Why is that? How does he wield power?
Well, this is one of the central themes that we chronicle in This Will Not Pass. And that is the grip, the iron grip that President Trump has had on the Republican Party, really since he first arrived on the political scene in 2015. We get into depth, though, with a lot of inside stories that you have not seen before about how he controls the party, and even in his exile in the weeks and months after January 6th. That period, Judy, where for a few days it was unclear if he was still going to be the dominating force in the party, sort of why and how he was able to reclaim the control that he has to this day over the GOP, and why people like Kevin McCarthy came back to his embrace. And I think the short answer, Judy, is that he simply has great popularity among rank and file voters. And being a political leader, it basically offers you a test. You can try to lead your voters and steer them in a direction that you think is best for the country and for your party, or you can basically follow them and bow to their preferences, real or perceived. And that's what a lot of GOP leaders in Congress have done with Trump. They just believe he's popular among their voters, and it's not more complicated than that.
But Alex, you know, just picking up on what John just said, this relationship that Trump has to the Republican leadership in Congress, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, on the one hand, you have him basically doing what Donald Trump wanted, but then having a very frosty relationship with him. Right after January the 6th, he was upset too, but then he ended up not voting to impeach. I mean, how do you explain the Trump-McConnell dynamic?
Well, Judy, frosty is, if anything, an understatement in terms of the antipathy between those two Republican leaders. They have still not spoken since December of 2020, after Mitch McConnell publicly recognized Joe Biden as the legitimate winner of the 2020 election. We report in our book that they had a hostile phone call that day. Trump raised his voice at McConnell, and the two men have not spoken since then. But as you say, McConnell has not exactly waged all-out war on Trump, that despite in that brief window after January 6th, when he sounded like he was prepared to purge Donald Trump from the Republican Party and from the political system, that has not happened at all. And the reason, Judy, is a pure electoral politics, that Mitch McConnell acknowledges to people in private that he sees that Donald Trump has been a more enduring political figure than he expected him to be. That he said on the night of January 6th that Trump had finally discredited himself. And he acknowledged to his Senate colleagues, some of them anyway, months later, things had not turned out as he expected they would. And for Mitch McConnell, the paramount political goal is retaking control of the Senate in 2022. And so he has decided, and it really is this simple, to subordinate his genuine moral outrage about the way Trump behaved on and around January 6th to the short-term political imperative to not have conflict in the party.
And the two of you, it's not just Republicans. You, of course, have a lot of fresh reporting here about President Biden during the election and the year and a half since. John Martin, the ups and downs of his first year, including what turned out to be, someone who ran as a centrist when he ran for president, but then appeared to be catering to the progressives in the Democratic Party for the longest time. How did that happen? How much debate was there inside the Biden circle?
So I think Joe Biden, his inner circle, after he got elected, saw coming into the presidency at a time of crisis. They saw a reckoning taking place on matters of race. They obviously saw a public health crisis going on, and they still, to this day, obviously believe that there's a climate crisis. And they wanted to use that opening to try to do big things and create an enduring legacy. And there was always this tension, Judy, we talk about it in the book, between Biden's imperative of running as not Trump. A lot of Americans voted for him because he was not Trump, and the imperative of Biden wanted to unify the country, and Biden wanted to do big, sweeping, progressive things as president. And obviously, those two goals have come now into conflict. I also think there's something else at play, Judy, that we talk about in the book, and that is Biden's possibility as a one-term president. He's obviously going to be 80 years old later this year. He may just serve one term. He wants to have a big legacy. He sought this job for 40 years now. He finally has it, and he wants to create an enduring moment for himself as a consequential American president. And one, by the way, who could be more consequential than the president he served with. Yes, Barack Obama.
And Alex, I want to come to something you reported. Part of what, so much of what you reported about President Biden was what happened with the pullout from Afghanistan. As we now know, this is seen as a really one of the moments in the Biden presidency that has hurt him politically. Your reporting is that the president was blaming it on bad information from the people around him. Explain that.
That's right. You know, Joe Biden went out early in the summer and said this isn't going to be like Vietnam. It's not like our allies in Afghanistan are going to be overrun by the enemy immediately. And of course, that's exactly what happened just a few weeks later. And for all the Americans out there who watched that unfold and thought, gosh, that is not what I was told was going to happen here, the president was sort of with them on that. He hasn't gone out in public and blamed his advisors, blamed the intelligence community, but in private, he definitely felt that he had not been well served by the people briefing him on what to expect from Afghanistan. And the people around him, his political advisors and his allies on Capitol Hill, really look back at that moment last summer as a turning point politically for his presidency. He came into office saying that he was going to be, we're going to put the adults back in the White House. The experts were going to be back in charge. All that amateur, sort of corrupt government under Trump was going to be gone. And after the Afghanistan pullout, it's very clear that a whole swath of the American people really start to question the basic competence of the administration. And when he tries to pivot out of Afghanistan and go back to selling his domestic agenda, one of the things that we capture in the book is that he is just never quite able to regain his footing.
Jonathan Martin, Alex Burns, the book is This Will Not Pass, Trump, Biden, and the Battle for America's Future. Thank you both. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Judy.
Thanks, Judy.